Y'all, first of all, hello. Welcome to our little space on the interwebs. And, well, dig this. Look who is here with me today. Tobias Beckwith is in the house. What's up,
Thank
Tobias?
you. Hello.
So good to see you always.
So good to be here.
Let me just see you.
There you go.
It's the illusion of professionalism. That's how we start the magic
There
here.
we go. Right here in the studio.
Tobias Beckwith, we've crossed paths a few times since I've got here in Las Vegas.
We have.
And every time I've seen your face, it's just like a shining ray of positive energy and light. And then when you open your mouth, it's always wisdom. So
Oh, wow.
when you were here next door picking up your mail, because we do that around here sometimes at the mail zone, if you come to TrickSupply.
What a great service.
It works
Really?
well for the mail order business. I hope you're all using that mail order business at TrickSupply.com. That's how we pay the lights and we're able to do these things.
Yeah.
But you're over here picking up some mail, and I was chatting about the things we just looked at on the counter here. You've written a few books, and you've got one out currently for like
this
mainstream.
Is the newest one.
Yeah, we'll talk about all of these, but the magician's books are Beyond Deception and then Beyond Applause. And I was like, hey, do you have some of these available that we could put on the shelves?
And I did.
And you did. And man, how happy am I to see these books. This book here blew my mind. I was digging in there doing a deep dive yesterday.
Yeah.
Beyond Applause, Marketing and Management for the Independent Performer. It's a mother lode.
It is. I wrote it after working with Jeff McBride for 35 years and Marco Tempest and Paul Draper. And I thought, I wish this existed when I was getting into magic, or one for actors and they still don't for actors. It should be a textbook for every college performer or something like it.
Yeah, and this is very much like that. I want to go in a little more detail on what this book is. I'm assuming maybe there's a few people here who might not know your name. But let's get a little bit of the origin story of Tobias Beckwith. And you did just mention some of it, 35 years company of Jeff McBride.
Yeah, I was a theater kid. I wanted to be an actor, and I realized in college that I was a good enough actor, and if I went to New York, that meant I was going to be a waiter, because there were great actors in New York. And so I shifted direction to become a director, got my MFA as a director from University of Pittsburgh, taught there for a while. And about the end of the second year, I woke up one day and went, you always like to rag on people who are teaching things that they've never done professionally. You've never done this professionally. Pack your bags and get your ass to New York City. And I did, and fell into a job right away, not as an actor or a director, but managing the Fantastics, the longest running musical in the world at the time, off Broadway. And did that for a year and a half, and Sweeney Todd came along and advertised for production assistants.
Can you timestamp this? What year are we on?
This is 78, 79.
78.
I moved to New York.
Yeah.
Because Sweeney Todd opened at the end of 79.
All right.
And they were just looking for somebody to help them raise money, to be a secretary, basically.
All right.
They had placed the first ad ever for investors in the New York Times, because they're very strict legal ramifications, and you couldn't do that before, and they figured out a way to do it. So I learned immediately in their office, moving from general manager down to production assistant. Who would do that? Well, it's moving to Broadway, getting to work on a show with all the idols that I had ever wanted, as Stephen Sondheim and Hal Prince and Richard Barr at the time. That he produced all of the Edward Albee shows. So it was a chance to really learn the business. The business was nothing like I had learned in college.
You got to get boots on the ground in New York to really learn it, right?
Exactly. And did that, and then I managed the O Calcutta, the Nudie musical, for 5 years, and managed to move several of the Broadway production up. This was before 1980. Nobody had a computer in their office, and so we were doing royalty statements and everything was by hand, and green ledger books and that kind of thing. And it took forever. And suddenly that job that was 8 hours took 2 hours a day.
Plus, once the computers came along.
Once the computers, and I had free time, and I worked with dance companies, and I thought a dance company shouldn't have to beg for money all the time, because they were doing top quality. This was New York City. And,
Yeah, sure.
And they would do a concert and say, well, we only need to raise $50,000 to cover the expenses of this after we sell out for tickets. I said, that's wrong. People should be paying enough. Why don't we do some magic in the dance company? Then you could send your second troupe to Atlantic City or Las
as part
Vegas.
of being a theater kid, you already had interest in magic from a young age. Is that correct?
First book I ever bought was the First Book of Magic by Stoddard.
You just named a book I haven't read. The First Book of Magic by Stoddard. All right. I have homework to do today.
Yeah. And
how old were you then? Old enough to read? 6.
There was a whole series called The First Books. You could buy a first book of farming, a first book of horses, a first book of baseball, and 2/3 of the way down there was the First Book of Magic.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Because my parents read to us, and we had read the King Arthur stories, and I knew about Merlin, and
what a crazy time to be alive. Parents reading to their children.
I know, and I wanted to be a magician. I wanted those powers. And so I bought the book and hid it and went home, and it was full of stupid magic tricks.
Yeah.
And I was so upset. But I learned the tricks because I had to do a book report. And instead of writing it, it was more fun to do magic.
That's what I did in school. Anytime I had a speech report I was always a magic related thing if I could make it that.
Exactly. And so I performed. That was my first performance.
All right.
Was doing magic.
And then you just kind of stayed in the kind of magic ballpark, and then so you go to New York, you're interested in magic, you're obviously a smart businessman about this whole theater thing, and then how do you end up working with a guy like Jeff McBride? How does that happen?
I had a dance my dance company, my choreographers didn't want to do magic. They wanted to do serious dance. But
it's reasonable.
The producer, we ran both the theater and the show at O Calcutta, and he was open. I said, would you consider, and he came to see Jeff in Atlantic City, would you consider if we built a full show around, Jeff only had 20 minutes then.
Okay. He was doing a feature spot in a variety show.
Yeah, or an opening act. Yeah. I think the first time I saw him, he was opening for Raquel Welch, who knew she had a nightclub act, but she did.
Yeah,
and she
cool.
And he had opened for everybody. He'd opened for Diana Ross and Tina Turner and, all these people.
He was hot young talent in New York, right? And cutting edge so that it was desirable, right?
Exactly.
Not a stuffy guy in a tuxedo, but thrilling magic that people hadn't seen before.
Exactly. And he was telling a story with the magic. Every single piece of his had a story to it, but no words. He was not opening his mouth at all on stage at that point. And we went through a funny period where he wanted to learn to talk on stage. And the first show we did in New York, well, I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah.
I was working on this dance show. The producer said, yeah, you can rehearse on our stage. I had a friend that was choreographer. He said, yeah, I'll come in and work with you. I had friends who were dancers who said, yeah, I'll come in twice a week and we can do this.
Nice.
So we were rehearsing on the stage. I mean, it wasn't going where I wanted it to. And Bob Fitch, who was my best friend's best friend, we used to go out drinking.
Bob Fitch.
And we were having drinks. And I said, Bob, I'm having this problem. It's such and such. He says, you know what? You need to meet Jeff McBride. Here's his phone number. And that was how I met Jeff McBride.
Yeah, all right.
And I remember calling him at noon one day and ring, ring, ring. Who is this? And why are you bothering me at the crack of noon? And because this was a period when Jeff was he was playing at Club Ibis, which was a supper club there, I think for $150 a week. And doing 2 shows a night.
Yeah, but back in the 80s, that's like $1 million a day.
Wow. Not quite. Not enough to pay but then he would go from there down to Mostly Magic, this little magic club in the village. And Imam would put him on at 11 o'clock. And then he would go from there uptown to the Triple Inn, which was a dive bar where all the musicians in town hung out because there were two music studios on the block. And he would do a late set at 12:30 or 1 in the morning. And so, he was out until 3 in the morning. Of course, he didn't get up until noon. But
that seems to be commonplace in Las Vegas in general. I get that from a lot of magicians here.
A lot of performers.
Don't call me before noon.
Man,
I've got to adjust my schedule a little bit. I'm still on Grandpa Magic hours.
Yeah, me too now. But I used to, in New York, You get up at 10 in the morning, you had to be in the office at 11, and you'd work until 6 or 7, and then you do the show, and then you go out after the show because everybody's all wound up and you want to talk to your friends, and first thing you know, it's 2 in the morning and you go home.
And crack of dawn's 2 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly. But so I went to see Jeff, and he had 20 minutes. And I said, would you be interested in building a whole show? Because I had a producer and a theater, and the producer had said, yeah, we could do Midnight Magic Friday and Saturdays. And that wound up never happening, but it got us working with Jeff to build a show. He had a manager at the time who was also Raquel Welch's manager and Tennessee Williams' manager. He'd been a former William Morris agent. And he got AIDS and took a year and a half to die. And Jeff said, would you be my manager?
I see.
Because I said, I don't know. I don't want to be an agent. I don't want to be, hey, love you, baby.
That's like walking into the Twilight Zone after being on Broadway for what, 5 or 10 years? How long were you there? A while. And then
about 10 years.
Now you look at the big world of producing magic shows.
Yeah.
And what is that, right?
Exactly. And I said no first because I thought it was being an agent, and I didn't want to be an agent. I'd heard all those horrible jokes about agents, and a lot of them were true of the agents that I knew. They're not to say there aren't wonderful agents. I just didn't want to be one.
It's the difference of managing a show in a building that's and now you have to take the show out on the road, and that is very much more agent style work. Right.
Exactly. And we were talking before we started today about there's 100 different kinds of ways to be a magician. You can do strolling, you can do casinos, you can do off-Broadway theaters, you can do corporate events if you want to get paid a lot, you can do trade shows. And they're all different animals. They're as different as, Little League and Major League Baseball, or, they're there for different reasons, and you have to rethink what it's all about. But working with Jeff was my chance, because in the theater you're limited. If you're a company manager, you do not touch a light, you do not give a note to an actor, you do not, because there are other people whose jobs that you don't infringe on.
And often unionized, maybe even.
Usually, and part of my job as a company manager was dealing with all the unions. And which was actually a good thing. Standardization makes business a lot easier. If I know these are the rules, and you can rehearse an hour and a half, and then you need a 15-minute break, and then that makes your life easier, actually. So I enjoyed that aspect of it, but I didn't enjoy not being able to do all the things, because I'd learned to perform and sing and dance and direct and do lighting and do costuming and do all these other things. And suddenly working with Jeff McBride, it was like, oh, you can write a script?
You can do all of those things.
Oh, you can do my lights? Great. And so I got to do all the things that I had learned to do that I loved doing, but couldn't do on Broadway.
And these are the things that eventually would make it into the books that we started the set here today. This book, I guess, Beyond Deception, a little more on, that
was the first book, and it was really sharing theatrical stuff with magicians. So what did we learn in improv class that would be useful to you as a performer? And things, just really simple things that we don't think about, because we come to magic because we're fascinated by how it's done. How do I fool people? What's the trick? And suddenly you learn to speak very slowly or you do it really fast, and you do really loud, or you sing it. And suddenly that script, which we like to just call patter, comes alive. You get much better at it very quickly using the techniques in the book.
Yeah, we're looking like Magic Theater here, making choices, story, character, props, setting, themes, rhythm, tone, and mood. So much juice in this fruit here.
Yeah.
I'll go through the chapters briefly. I have a chapter on being the creator, creating the magic. And
which is really about, if you're the performer, you're in charge of somebody's experience. You're creating that whole experience, and you're automatically the boss, because our culture says if you're standing up there and I'm sitting here in the audience, you're the boss.
Yeah, especially in a theatrical environment.
Yeah, and the idea that we're all creators.
Yeah,
we create our lives we can create better lives.
We can create our own
Once
realities.
we know that.
That's right.
Exactly.
We'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
You follow into a bit on creativity, which I love. I always have questions about how to be a creative person. You have systems.
And there are so many ways. Yeah. That Triz, that's the first one.
Yeah. TRIZ. What is that?
This guy wrote a book about inventing. And he said, here's a grid with 40 things on one side and 40 things on the other side. These are mechanical principles. These are what you want to do. Mix and match.
Okay. Right.
And it works.
Triz.
The guy Altshuler died with like 170 patents to his name.
Wow. I do like when we get questions to ask them. Tim's asking one that's pertinent. What's the best way to start a script for an illusion or a trick? Is there a best way?
I don't know if there's a best way. There's a lot of ways. It helps to get an idea of what the trick is for. Eugene Berger used to like to say, there is a plot to every piece of magic. The rings, things that are separate can be joined. Things that are joined sometimes are separated. And now you have a theme. Now there's a story. What in my life would I like to join, or what gets separated? Well, we get divorced, we get together,
right.
we have children and suddenly they pull apart, or there are stories that fit tricks. So find out what the trick is really about. Is it about things that are lost can be found? A card, for example. Did you ever lose something? And suddenly I've got a hook to start creating a piece around that trick. I for years in teaching the master classes, people would say, but I'm not a storyteller. I say, yes, you are. Because somebody goes away from your performance and describes it. What happened? Well, he took out a deck of cards and he told me to take one and to put it back, and then it reappeared. That's a story. Well, could you make it a better story? What if that card that you picked had a value? What if there were stakes to it? What if the magician was playing a role and you were playing a role? And now it gets more memorable and more interesting, but you got to work at it.
Storytelling is king, right? We chatted about it at length before we started the stream, and that's probably the best place to start, right? Developing a presentation is make it an interesting story that you can relate to an audience.
Absolutely.
That they can appreciate. You want to put it in the realm that,
Yeah.
So, storytelling. I'm sure you have lots of essays in this book on storytelling and developing scripts. You have case studies on developing pieces. There's Jeff McBride's The Rainmaker. That's an example.
And he actually helped me write that section, so it's about how he did that. And that was the first piece I ever saw him create.
The Rainmaker. Well, what a strong piece that is. And if you haven't seen McBride do the water bowls, chef's kiss.
Amazing. Yeah. And he worked on it with Bob Fitch. They created, he came back from Europe. He'd been on tour. The guy named Wadini, a Polish magician, traded him Jeff's coin routine for the water bowls. But it was just the technique. It was they fill, you drink, they fill, you drink. There was no plot to it. There was and it was beautiful magic, but Jeff wanted things that had meaning.
He found the story.
And he and Bob worked in the Edison Theater where we were rehearsing his show. Every day they'd come in for 2 hours and work over in the lobby and work on that thing.
That's what it takes to be great, folks. A couple hours a day, every day with a good director, and you travel to Poland, get some great techniques. It's not easy to do good magic well. Let's see what Adonis wants to know. Do you start with an idea for a theme and find the trick, or do you pick the trick and then the theme? What do you think about that?
6 of one, half a dozen of the other. One trick works one way, one works another. I asked Jeff about that once when we started to work. He used to live in a place he called the Pyramid, which had been the coal house for a foundry, but it had a pyramid roofed. And he lived in it. He had a mattress on the floor, and the walls were lined.
Sounds like a very McBride thing to do.
Yeah. And the walls were lined
in that pyramid over there
with cases. It was like a magic shop.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I find a piece of magic I want to work on, and I pull out music that I think would fit, and I play.
So good.
And sooner or later, something comes through or not. And he showed me couple of years ago, he started doing chords of Fantasia, and which to me is not the greatest piece of but he loves it. And I said, so when did you start working on this? Oh, when I was 15, you know, and he's 60 now.
Yep.
And he never performed it live until 5 years ago. Other pieces, you know, the water bowls he worked on for about 6 months before we came up with that particular thing. So every piece is different. Sometimes there's a theme that you want to do. He was doing themes about AIDS. Character pieces when he first started, and about characters and whatever it was. But those came together very quickly because it was, here's a theme, here's a story. Oh, I could do an appearing silk. I could do this, I could do that. And he could put them together in a couple of weeks. So every piece is different. Every piece starts differently. And the ones that stick. Creativity is never about succeeding or failing. The more you fail, the more you will succeed. It's like if you throw out a dozen ideas you thought were great and one is left, you've succeeded. You found the one.
And this is a good creative exercise too, to not restrict yourself when trying to develop ideas along these lines, right? Open up the floodgates, let it all flow, see what sticks, and then you'll be a step closer to figuring out the trick or the script, whichever one it needs to be.
Exactly.
All right. If you guys are in the chat and have questions for Tobias, get them into the stream. I'm going to do just a little bit of business. You were a moment ago talking about all of the ways that we can enjoy magic, and one of them is this. You didn't mention that you could be a collector of magic. And this week we are going to be presenting as a dealer and when I say we, I say TrickSupply, at the Las Vegas Magic Collectors Expo coming up next week, Las Vegas, May 5th, 6th, and 7th, over at the Orleans. And this is where you're going to go see all of the fancy older magic and presentations on the subject. There's a variety of dealers here. Look, Mike Cavani's there. Charles Green will be in town. I haven't seen Charles in a long time.
Yeah.
Great to see him. Andy with all the books. TrickSupply will be there. You'll have to go say hi to Wolfgang. I'll be imagining I'm holding down the fort here at the shop. And if anyone wants to come visit me while you're in town for the Collectors Expo, well, come say hi. I'm here from noon to 6, 5 days a week. And if you are at the Collectors Expo, I put one of the props will be, that's the end prop.
There it is.
Look at this thing. This is the world's largest phantom tube. I think Wolf said this might be a Mac Magic product, but these are the kind of weird oddities that you'll see at the Magic Collectors Expo, and you can produce a small child or a giant fish from this thing if you so desire, and hope to see some smiling faces at the Orleans next week in Las Vegas. Will you be going to this thing? Is that
probably not
your cup of tea?
I'm very much in the process of getting rid of everything I own because I'm about to become a nomad.
Yeah, you're about to go off and write another book. Like
a
couple of, how many books have you penned? Because we have a few on the table here.
This is the 6th.
This is the 6th one.
There were 3 for magicians, this one and the subsequent one, and then this one.
I want to wrap up with spending some time about business on magic. Let's talk about your new book here, though, for just a minute. The Performer's Edge, which is more of a mainstream book, certainly applicable to magicians. But what's the deal with this guy?
Well, because I've been both theater and magic theater are about our minds. How does your mind work? How do we get fooled? How do we get? And I've always found that really fascinating. And I thought, a few years ago, I read a book on crowdsourcing that said, the best ideas come from outside your field. The person that invented whiteout was trying to do something else and was not even, or the person who invented the sticky note was trying to invent something else. And there's a company called Innocentive who big corporations go, we want to create this product. We don't know how to create it. And they give it to their chemistry department or their whatever, and nothing happens. So they post it, and they post a prize for it. If you solve this problem, we'll pay you $40,000.
Oh, yeah.
And plumbers solve manufacturing problems. Chefs solve performance problems. People from outside, because they have a different point of view. They have a different perspective, and they go, oh, that's just like that thing we do as plumbers every day. but you never think of because you're into wrenches and saws,
Right.
you know? And so the first book was The Wizard's Way. I started that out to be this book, and then I liked the word wizard, and then I decided that magicians weren't wizards. Wizards bend reality to help the world. Magicians bend reality to entertain us.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
And so this is a book about what we know as wizards, as magicians, what we know as actors. Actors can transform themselves in 10 seconds. The guy you talk to in the wings is not the guy out there center stage. And they're aware of the difference. Yeah, you're always aware of being yourself, but you're also aware of the character you're playing, and something snaps in and you become that person. We all have that ability, and it can serve us in business, in sales, in dealing with our kids, in everything else. So this book is about that kind of thing. What do performers know? What are the disciplines? It's mostly interviews. I talked to Paul Draper about culture.
Paul Draper, he was in this shop 2 days ago picking up a few things. Hey, Paul, hope you're seeing this. What's up, Paul? Too. I got a one-on-one performance of his linking rings. He was singing in the store to me while doing the linking rings.
Yeah. He loves that.
I hope I get Paul in here one day. I interrupted.
You will.
I got excited about.
I'm sure, because Paul's great, and he's really good at this kind of.
We were talking about
interview.
Zoom shows and everything he did online, and he's got so much knowledge to share as well.
But I have to warn you, this starts out with my story about buying the magic book and being disappointed. But I learned the first rule of magic, which is never reveal your secrets. We reveal all the secrets in here.
Here we go. Performer's Edge. I put a link in the description of this video. If that title interests you, you can go hunt that up as well. Let's go back to some of the subjects you have here to
you wanted to talk about business.
Yeah, we do. Like this book here, it's the mother lode. If you are interested in being a working professional, Tobias has built, it's like a collegiate level style workbook is what it is, right? So this is designed, it's got it all in here. It's just what would you let's just maybe keep it a little bit simple. Can you give me like 1 or 2 bits of practical advice that maybe a modern performer might be able to put to use from
well, as magicians, we like to think I'm a one-man show. I do it all. I book myself, I do this and that. Eugene Berger, when asked, said, what's your biggest regret? He said, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't answer my own phone. You want a team. You want somebody else. As a manager, my strength is that I can say, I don't think Jeff will go for that. Jeff might go for it. But as a manager, I can say, no, I don't think so. Oh, no, he's much, he would never work for that fee. Blah, blah, blah. He hasn't done that for years. And he's won this award and he's the greatest at this and he's that. And if he says that stuff, he's bragging. He's not a good person. If I say it, it's a different thing. So building a team, between he and I will say everything you don't see him do on stage, I'm doing backstage or in the office. But it wasn't just me. There were artists, there are accountants, there are advertising people, there are printers, everybody that you have contacted with in your business. Make them part of your team, inspire them, learn how to lead a team, because that's how you get bigger.
I wish, this is advice I should take to heart. It's something I should have done years ago to manage all of the, interest I have. And, I got a lot of irons in the fire. It's an understatement. So great advice. Maybe a little challenging to relinquish some of those control.
Very hard. I have difficulty with it.
Yeah.
We were talking about earlier about building our websites. I should hire somebody, but I can't let go of it. Some things I just can't. And I should. But
you would say that when you can, you're going to end up winning in the long run, assuming you find your Tobias Beckwith to join your team.
But think of them as your team. If you get things, I don't know people do this. If you go to Kinko's to have your flyers printed, the guy at Kinko's becomes part of your team. Inspire him, do magic for him, make these people, inspire them with your mission. If you know why you're doing the magic, that's that's really the biggest thing. Why am I doing this? And we were talking about the book I'm working on, which is about magic theater. Every kind of magic, every kind of theater has a different purpose. If you're performing in a trade show booth, you're not there to be the best magician. You're there to gather the biggest crowd and qualify them and send them to the salespeople. If you succeed in those things, nobody cares if your magic goes wrong.
Right.
the people that hire you. On the other hand, if you're at the Magic Castle performing in the close-up room, you'd better do the best magic. There's a different purpose for being there. If I'm in a casino, people think I'm there to do a great show, and I am. But what I'm really there to do is advertise the casino, get people in the showroom, get them excited, because excited people gamble more, and get them back out on the floor in 60 to 70 minutes. If you go longer than that, they don't like you.
Yeah, you're costing them the money.
Yeah.
That could be lots of money in some cases.
Yeah. So figuring out why I'm doing this magic for me and for the person that hires me is key to how you become successful in the business. If I'm doing family shows, I'm not there just to fool them. I'm there to make sure they have a great party. I'm there to make sure the birthday boy becomes this hero of the party. I'm there to give them memories, which I read a book about speaking recently, and they said, you're there to create memories. So construct your presentation, your speech for what will be remembered a week from now.
Right.
That's more important than, and as magicians, we know it. Jeff, do you carry Kundalini rising here?
We do. Yep.
Well, when Jeff teaches that, he talks about, if a lot of people know it.
The Kundalini Rising is a rising card in the spectator's hands. They hold the box deck, and their selected card rises in their hands.
And what they remember is what they tell him. He tells them at the end. He said, now that card that you only thought of, which he touched, they pulled out of the card in his hand, which I have never touched.
Right.
And just holding you, and I was across the room, and they remember. And they remember, I just thought of the card and it rises out in my hands.
Yeah.
And the magician never touched it, but he did touch it. At the end, he told them that he never touched it.
You said it earlier. We're crafting the realities that the spectators perceive.
He's crafting the memory. And that's what they tell their friends. And it sounds totally impossible in memory. When you see it, well, if you know how it's like any magic trick. Once you know how it's done, it's not a mystery anymore. But yeah.
But it's all good when you have good storytelling, right? And you got a great director, manager getting things together, and
and systems developed in today's world with AI and all of this. There's no excuse not to be professional. There's no excuse not to have a 1-page contract or a 5-page contract if you do big corporate things that you can put in somebody's hands from your telephone.
It's all in here, folks. He gives you all of that information. We could talk for 4 hours, but I can't, because I have to open the doors to this magic shop today. I'm assuming some of you would be interested in these titles, and that would be a wise choice if you are. And we have them at TrickSupply.com now. Not hundreds of them. This is not widely available, the hardcover release, right?
No, it was printed 15 years ago, and there's... Well, you've got 10 of the last 50.
And we're selling them actively. So if you want one, get in the website. The link is in the description of this video. Go order that up. And if you are a working professional and ready to level up your business side, this book will change your life. I guarantee it. It's underpriced. You need to up the price on this book.
Thank you.
I've seen magic business books. This should be hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, too many magic business books are. I've discovered the latest secret, and it feels like a scam, and you feel like a scammer when you do it.
So you're just looking to provide true value for
this was, let me give you the principles. You might not, when I started out, we had to cut and paste ads, layouts,
literally with the scissors and the glue,
and then take them over to the photographer that did that kind of thing for us in the New York Times. And today you do it all on your computer, or you do it with AI today. You say, I need an ad that does this and this, and
it's all done. The time.
There's no excuse not to look professional, not to behave professionally, not to get back to people right away. I always figure if somebody calls me, say, can we book Jeff McBride? What does he go for? If I don't answer the phone, they're going to call the next person on their list. You just lost the gig by being slow. You just lost the gig by being unprofessional. And it's too easy to be professional today. It's too easy to have the website, to have the contract, to follow up, to build follow-ups. And the more professional you are, the better relationship you develop. Business is all about relationships. Business is about, I do business with people that I like to do business with. Sometimes I could find a better person, but I don't like them. So I do it with
you're
the
here
people.
with us today.
Well, yeah, this is a case in point.
Yeah.
You know, and so be those people, build the relationships. It makes your life better all around, let alone for your business. So do it.
That sounds like good advice to end this conversation on, folks. Let me echo the sentiments of the chat. Thank you, Tobias. Thanks for the good word there. And Tim, and yeah, yo, Adonis, I agree. Every time I see this man, it's great to have a conversation, and maybe one day we'll do this again. You're about to go to Belize and write this next book.
I am.
Do you have a title for it yet?
No, it's going to be about theater and magic. All magic is theater, so let's look at it from what's close-up magic theater for, what's strolling magic theater for, what is a small theater magic for, and insights into each one of those kind of things. Because over 35 years with Jeff and Marco Tempest, and I worked with Paul Draper, helped him put his first show together. I've done all those things and have thoughts about them, so it'll be sharing.
That's good.
What I know.
And that's what we need. More books like that. Trick books are great. Tricky tricks. We all need those. But if you want to become a great magician, this is the substance. This is the stuff that will make you from good to great. And thank you, Tobias, for taking some time from your day and spending it with us.
Much fun to be here.
It is. Yeah, that's why I'm here to have fun, share the magic, and hopefully make the magic world a little better place one day at a time.
Yeah.
We did that today, and if you want to make your magic world better, go pick up the books. The links are in the description. Hey, y'all, that is going to be a wrap from Trick Supply live in Las Vegas. Maybe we'll see some of you here at the Magic Collectors Expo next week.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, I'll be back here live next Friday, 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 Eastern. One more thanks to Tobias.
Thank you.
It's going to be ciao for now, y'all. Au revoir.
Bye.